It was bridge night, and Margaret was having a blast with her girlfriends, completely losing track of time, until she glanced at the clock. "Oh no, I have to rush home and make dinner for my husband. He's going to be furious if it's not ready." Panicked, she bolted out the door, raced home, and flung open the pantry. Her heart sank. All she had was one wilted lettuce leaf, a single egg, a can of cat food. She froze. Desperate times, desperate measures. With no other option, Margaret cracked the egg into the cat food, gave it a good stir, and garnished the concoction with the sad-looking lettuce leaf, just as she heard her husband's car pulling into the driveway. She greeted him with a forced smile and held her breath as he took his first bite. To her shock, his eyes lit up. "Darling," he said between mouthfuls, "this is the best meal you've made in 40 years. You can cook this for me any day." Margaret blinked. Well, that was unexpected, and so every bridge night she served him the same dish. When she finally told her bridge friends about it, they gasped in horror. "You're feeding him cat food? You're going to kill him." Margaret simply shrugged. 2 months later, her husband died. The women were back at the bridge table when one of them leaned in, eyes wide. "You killed him! We told you feeding him that cat food would do him in. How can you just sit here playing bridge, knowing you murdered your husband?" Margaret calmly set down her cards, took a sip of tea, and replied, "I didn't kill him. He fell off the mantel while licking his paws." Sarah was exhausted. 9 months pregnant and long past her due date, she felt like she had been waiting forever. To break the monotony, she and her husband, Mike, decided to go see a movie. When they arrived at the theater, Sarah headed inside to find seats, while Mike stopped at the concession stand to grab popcorn and drinks. As he paid for the refreshments, disaster struck. He knocked over his soda, sending a tidal wave of cola cascading over the counter. The cashier gave him a sympathetic look, mopped up the mess, and kindly refilled his drink. Feeling flustered, Mike hurried into the theater and plopped down next to Sarah. Still rattled, he launched into an animated retelling of his soda mishap, complete with dramatic hand gestures. And just as he was reenacting the moment of impact, whoosh! His elbow clipped the bucket of popcorn, sending a buttery explosion of kernels raining down in every direction. Mortified, he sighed, got up, and shuffled back to the lobby for yet another refill. As soon as he was out of earshot, the woman sitting next to Sarah leaned over and whispered, "You're not going to let him hold the baby, are you?" Joe had been in the intensive care unit for 3 days. It was his 5th surgery, this time to remove most of what remained of his small intestine. The operation had taken hours longer than expected, and Joe, already weak, wasn't responding. I sat by his bedside, holding his hand, praying for any sign that he was still fighting. 2 nurses worked tirelessly, gently urging him to cough, blink, move a finger. Anything to show he could hear them. Nothing. One of the nurses turned to me, her expression sympathetic. "Maybe if I knew something personal about your family, I could use it to stimulate a response. Perhaps you, as his daughter, could help?" I blinked. Then I laughed. "I'd be happy to give you personal information," I said, "and thank you for the compliment, but I'm actually his wife of 43 years, not his daughter." The nurse's eyes widened in surprise. "Wait! The entire staff thought you were his daughter. We even commented on how sweet it was that his daughter never left his side." As they gushed about how young I looked, a faint cough suddenly came from the hospital bed. We all whipped around to stare at Joe. His eyes stayed closed, but in a voice loud and clear, he muttered, "She dyes her hair." One afternoon, Mark came home from work to find his house in absolute chaos. The front yard looked like a war zone. His 3 kids were outside in their pajamas, playing in the mud, surrounded by empty food boxes and discarded wrappers. The front door was wide open, and so was his wife's car door. A sinking feeling settled in his stomach. Inside, things were even worse. A lamp lay on its side. The carpet was crumpled against the wall, and the TV was blaring cartoons at full volume. The living room was a minefield of toys and clothes, and in the kitchen, the sink overflowed with dirty dishes. Breakfast remnants were splattered on the table, a broken glass glistened under the dining chair, and someone, presumably the dog, had knocked over a bowl of kibble, leaving it scattered across the floor. A pile of dirt sat ominously near the back door, as if someone had started cleaning, and then just given up. Mark's heart pounded. Was his wife okay? He rushed upstairs, stepping over laundry and abandoned toys, dreading what he might find. And there she was, lounging in bed, still in her pajamas, book in hand, looking completely relaxed. She glanced up at him with a sweet smile. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" Mark, still bewildered, gestured wildly at the disaster zone behind him. "What the hell happened here today?" His wife grinned, closed her book, and said, "You know how every day you come home and ask me what in the world I do all day?" Mark hesitated. Yeah?" She stretched, settling deeper into her pillows. "Well, today I didn't do it." A husband's reactions to his wife's colds over 7 years of marriage, because love evolves, and so does patience. Year 1, "Sugar dumpling, I've really been worried about my baby girl. That's a bad sniffle. And with all the strep going around, I don't want to take any chances. I'm booking you a full checkup at the hospital. I know the food's terrible, but don't worry. I've already arranged with the supervisor to bring you dinner from Rossini's every night. You just rest, sweetheart. I'll take care of everything." Year 2, "Listen, darling, that cough doesn't sound good. I'm calling Doc Miller to come over right away. You just go to bed like a good girl. Papa's got this." Year 3, "Honey, maybe you should lie down for a bit. Nothing like a little rest when you feel lousy. Want me to bring you something? Do we have any canned soup?" Year 4, "Now look, dear, be sensible. After you've fed the kids, done the dishes, and mopped the floor, why don't you take a little rest?" Year 5, "Why don't you just take a couple of aspirins?" Year 6, "Could you gargle or something instead of barking like a seal all evening?" Year 7, "Would you stop coughing on me? Are you trying to give me pneumonia?" Sam called his wife, his voice weak and trembling. "Hey, baby, I was driving to a coffee shop to meet Mary when—" "Wait, who?" His wife cut in. Mary," Sam hesitated before quickly continuing. "Anyway, a stray dog suddenly ran onto the road. I swerved left to avoid it, but the car skidded on the wet road, rolled over 3 times, and nearly plunged off a cliff." "Oh, my God!" his wife gasped. "I was hanging there, love. The car was teetering on the edge, nose down, with nothing but thousands of feet of empty space beneath me. I was staring at death itself. With sheer willpower, I clawed my way out of the wreckage just seconds before the car plummeted over the cliff and exploded into a fiery inferno. Oh my God, Sam, are you okay?" "Well, I was rushed to the hospital. I have a broken leg, a fractured jaw, a dislocated shoulder, and a few head injuries." A moment of silence. Then his wife asked in a dangerously calm voice, "Who is Mary?" A priest sat alone in a pew, his hands clasped tightly, his face etched with worry. Another priest, noticing his troubled expression, approached and asked, "Father, is everything all right?" With a deep sigh, the first priest replied, "Have you ever heard of a Freudian slip?" "A what?" the second priest asked, puzzled. "A Freudian slip," the first priest explained. "It's when you accidentally say what you're really thinking instead of what you meant to say, often at the worst possible moment." "Oh, I see. That sounds awkward. Did that happen to you?" The first priest buried his face in his hands. "Yes, today during a wedding ceremony." "Oh dear," the second priest said, concerned. "What did you say?" The first priest exhaled slowly. "You know the part where I'm supposed to say, 'I now pronounce you man and wife.' Yes? Well, what actually came out was, 'I now sentence you to death.'" Tim and Nancy lived right in the heart of Anchorage, Alaska. Their home was smack dab in downtown, but despite its location, they had no indoor plumbing, just an old outhouse sitting out back. As Tim got older, though, that outhouse seemed to get farther and farther away. One particularly cold night, he decided to skip the long trek and relieve himself right off the front porch instead. Nancy was not amused. "Tim, you idiot! The neighbors can see you when you do that." "Nah," Tim said confidently. "It's dark. They can't see me." Nancy shook her head. "Of course they can. You're silhouetted against the porch light, and they know exactly what you're doing." Tim hadn't thought about that, so he reluctantly agreed to stop. A few nights later, the temperature dropped even lower. Right in the middle of the night, nature called, badly. He got up, slipped on his slippers, and shuffled out of the bedroom. Minutes later, he climbed back into bed. Nancy, ever suspicious, narrowed her eyes. "You weren't gone very long." "Nope," Tim replied. "You went off the porch again, didn't you?" He hesitated. "Maybe." Nancy groaned. "Tim, we talked about this. The neighbors can see you." Tim grinned. "Not this time. This time, I was squatting." A couple was celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary on the beach in Montego Bay, Jamaica. Their peaceful, loving relationship had long been the talk of the town. Such a happy couple, everyone would say. A local newspaper reporter, curious about their secret to marital bliss, asked the husband how they had managed to stay so happy for half a century. "Well," the man said with a smile, "it all goes back to our honeymoon in America. We visited the Grand Canyon and decided to take a horseback ride down to the bottom. We hadn't gone far when my wife's horse stumbled. She looked down at it and calmly said, 'That's once.' A little while later, the horse stumbled again, causing her to drop her water bottle. She quietly said, 'That's twice.' Not even half a mile later, the horse stumbled a third time. My wife calmly reached into her purse, pulled out a revolver, and shot the horse dead. I was shocked. I yelled, 'What on earth is wrong with you, woman? You just shot that poor animal. Are you crazy?' She turned to me, looked me straight in the eyes, and quietly said, 'That's once.' And from that moment on, we have lived happily ever after." Eric sat at the bar, hunched over his beer, stirring the froth absent-mindedly with a straw. His face was drawn, his shoulders slumped, and every now and then he let out a deep sigh. Tom, his longtime friend, walked in, immediately spotting Eric's dejected posture. He slid onto the stool next to him and gestured to the bartender for his usual drink. "All right, mate. What's with the long face?" Tom asked, nudging Eric with his elbow. Eric didn't respond. Instead, he took a long sip of his beer and let out another sigh. "Come on, man, I haven't seen you this down since your team lost the championship in the last minute. What happened? Work? Bills? Car trouble?" Tom pressed. Eric finally looked up, his eyes filled with the kind of dread a man only gets when he knows he's in serious trouble. "Worse," he muttered. Tom raised an eyebrow. "Worse than your car breaking down in the middle of nowhere?" Eric nodded gravely. "Worse than forgetting your anniversary?" Tom asked, now genuinely curious. Eric exhaled and took another sip. "Way worse." Tom leaned in. "All right, spill it." Eric rubbed his face and groaned. "I fell into one of those traps, man. One of those impossible questions women ask, the kind where there's no right answer, only degrees of wrong." Tom smirked knowingly. "Oh, one of those. Go on." Eric straightened up, took a deep breath, and began explaining. "So last night, my wife and I were watching TV. Out of nowhere, she turns to me, gives me this serious look, and asks, 'Eric, will you still love me when I'm old, fat, and ugly?'" Tom nearly choked on his drink. "Oof. That's a minefield, my friend." Eric nodded. "Exactly. I knew I had to be careful. My brain went into full panic mode. I told myself, okay, Eric, this is not a time for jokes, no hesitation, no sarcasm, just say something reassuring and sweet." Tom grinned. "And? What did you say?" Eric groaned and put his head in his hands. "I meant to say, of course I will. But instead I said, of course I do." Father Michael sat alone in a pew, his hands clasped together, his eyes fixed on the floor. His usually serene face was clouded with worry. Every few moments he would let out a long sigh, shake his head, and murmur something under his breath. Father Thomas, his longtime friend and fellow priest, happened to walk by and noticed his distress. Concerned, he approached and sat beside him. "Michael, you look troubled. What's wrong?" Father Michael sighed heavily. "Oh, Thomas, have you ever heard of a Freudian slip?" Father Thomas furrowed his brows. "A Freudian slip? No, I don't believe so." "Well," Michael explained, rubbing his temples, "it's when you accidentally say something you're thinking deep down, usually at the worst possible time. It just slips out." "Ah, I see. And did something like that happen to you?" Thomas asked, now intrigued. Father Michael let out another long sigh and nodded. "You know how I performed a wedding ceremony today?" Yes, Thomas replied. A beautiful occasion, I heard, a joyous day. Father Michael groaned. Well, it was supposed to be, but you know the part where I'm supposed to say, I now pronounce you man and wife. Thomas nodded. Of course. One of the most important moments of the ceremony. Father Michael winced. That's what I meant to say, but instead I accidentally said, I now sentence you to death. After 17 years of marriage, a man dumped his wife for a younger woman. The downtown luxury apartment was in his name, and he wanted to remain there with his new love, so he asked the wife to move out, and then he would buy her another place. The wife agreed to this, but asked that she be given 3 days on her own there to pack up her things. While he was gone, the first day she lovingly put her personal belongings into boxes, crates, and suitcases. On the second day, she had the movers come and collect her things. On the third day, she sat down for the last time at their candlelit dining table, soft music playing in the background, and feasted on a pound of shrimp and a bottle of Chardonnay. When she had finished, she went into each room and deposited a few of the shrimp and resulting shrimp shells into the hollow of the curtain rods. She then cleaned up the kitchen and left. The husband came back with his new girl, and all was bliss for the first few days. Then it started to stink, slowly but surely. Clueless, the man could not explain why the place smelled so bad. They tried everything. They cleaned and mopped and aired the place out. Vents were checked for dead rodents, carpets were steam cleaned, and air fresheners were hung everywhere. Exterminators were brought in, the carpets were replaced, and on it went. Finally, they could take it no more and decided to move. The moving company arrived and did a very professional packing job, taking everything to their new home, including the curtain rods. It was a bright Saturday morning when John and his wife Lisa set out on what he dreaded most, shopping for a new dress. Lisa had been talking about it all week, and John, knowing there was no escape, resigned himself to his fate. It won't take long, Lisa had promised as they walked into the first store. John, however, knew better. The first shop had a dazzling display of dresses, and Lisa immediately got to work, flicking through hangers at lightning speed. John, on the other hand, slumped into the nearest chair, prepared for what he knew would be a test of endurance. What do you think of this one? Lisa asked, holding up a bright red dress. It's nice, John said enthusiastically, hoping to speed up the process. Lisa frowned. Nice, just nice. Never mind, let me check some more. And so it began. After an hour, Lisa had shortlisted about 100 dresses. John, who had started the day with good posture and energy, was now hunched over, feeling his will to live slowly slipping away. 2 hours in, Lisa narrowed it down to 25 dresses. 3 hours in, she turned to John. I need your help. Pick 5 out of these. John, suddenly given an ounce of power, carefully selected 5 dresses, making sure to choose the ones that looked the most comfortable, for him to sit and wait while she tried them on. Lisa studied them for a moment, then, with a decisive nod, picked one dress. John checked his watch. 5 hours, 1 dress. Finally, they reached the billing counter. John, relieved that the ordeal was coming to an end, pulled out his wallet and paid. As they walked out of the store, he sighed and muttered, Adam was so lucky. He and Eve only wore leaves. He never had to go through all this. Lisa, without missing a beat, smirked and replied, Who knows how many trees Adam had to climb before Eve finally picked the perfect leaves? You should count yourself lucky. You just had to sit in an air-conditioned store. John blinked. He had no comeback. He had lost yet another battle. It was a bright, sunny afternoon when Harold and Mabel, an elderly couple married for over 50 years, decided to take a scenic road trip. They had done this many times before, cruising through the countryside, enjoying the fresh air, and occasionally stopping at random roadside diners for a bite to eat. That afternoon, they pulled into a small, charming restaurant just off the highway. The kind of place with checkered tablecloths, an old-fashioned jukebox in the corner, and a friendly waitress who called everyone sweetheart. They enjoyed a hearty meal. Mabel had the chicken pot pie, while Harold grumbled about his overcooked steak but ate every bite anyway. After finishing their coffee, they paid the bill, left a small tip, and headed back to their car to continue their journey. For a while, all was peaceful. Harold drove in his usual gruff silence while Mabel hummed along to an old country tune playing on the radio. Then, about 40 minutes into their drive, Mabel suddenly gasped. "Oh, dear," she exclaimed, clutching her purse. Harold, startled, nearly swerved off the road. What now?" he barked. "I left my glasses back at the restaurant," she admitted, her voice small. Harold clenched the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. "You've got to be kidding me, Mabel. You mean to tell me we just drove 40 damn minutes, and now you remember?" Mabel winced. "I'm sorry, dear, I just realized." Realized? I tell you, woman, this is exactly why I say you need to keep things in one place. How do you forget something you literally used to see?" Grumbling under his breath, Harold kept driving until he could finally find a place to turn around. The journey back was nothing short of a full-blown rant session. "This is just great! 40 minutes out, 40 minutes back, that's an hour and 20 minutes wasted! I should have known this would happen. It always happens. Why can't you be more organized? Lord knows I try to keep everything in its place. My keys, my wallet, my hat." Mabel sat quietly, hands folded in her lap, choosing wisely not to argue. By the time they finally pulled back into the restaurant parking lot, Harold was still fuming. Mabel got out quickly, desperate to retrieve her glasses and put an end to the whole ordeal. As she hurried toward the door, Harold rolled down his window and hollered after her, "And while you're in there, you might as well grab my hat and the credit card." Miss Jones wanted to teach her class about vegetables. She picked up a piece of chalk, drew a large cucumber on the blackboard, and asked, "Class, can anyone tell me what this is?" Before anyone else could answer, little Johnny blurted out, "It's a miss." Miss Jones gasped, her face turning bright red. "That's it, Johnny! I've had enough of your filthy mouth! I'm getting the principal!" She stormed out and returned moments later with the principal, who walked in, glanced at the blackboard, and froze. After a long pause, he cleared his throat and asked, "All right, which one of you is little Johnny? And more importantly, who the hell drew that so accurately?" A man walked into a therapist's office, his shoulders slumped, his face a perfect picture of misery. He sighed deeply as he sat down, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Doc, you've got to help me. I can't go on like this," he said, his voice heavy with despair. Dr. Stevens, an experienced therapist, leaned forward, adjusting his glasses as he studied the man. "All right, let's talk about it. What seems to be the problem?" The man shook his head. "I'm 35 years old, and no matter what I do, I can't seem to attract women. It's like I have some invisible force field that repels them. I try to be nice, I dress well, I even attempted that whole playing hard to get thing. Nothing works. I just scare them away." Dr. Stevens nodded thoughtfully. "I see. Well, my friend, this isn't an unusual problem. What you need is to boost your self-esteem." "Self-esteem?" the man repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Exactly. Confidence is key. Here's what I want you to do. Every morning, the moment you wake up, run to the bathroom mirror. Look yourself in the eye and say, out loud, 'I am a good person. I'm a fun person. I am an attractive person.' But you have to say it with conviction. Say it like you believe it, even if you don't at first. If you do this daily, I guarantee that within a week, women will be drawn to you." For the first time in ages, the man's face lit up with hope. "You really think that'll work?" Dr. Stevens smiled. "I know it will. Confidence is irresistible." The man left the office with a spring in his step, eager to put the advice into action. 3 weeks later, Dr. Stevens was in his office when the same man walked back in. But instead of the hopeful, excited guy from before, he was back to looking miserable, if not worse. His shoulders were sagging, his eyes had deep circles under them, and he looked downright exhausted. Dr. Stevens furrowed his brows. "Oh no, did my advice not work?" The man let out a tired chuckle. "Oh, it worked all right, Doc. For the past 3 weeks, I've had the time of my life. Beautiful women are all over me. I walk into a room and they just gravitate toward me. I've never been this confident, and let me tell you, it's been incredible." Dr. Stevens blinked, confused. "Well, that's fantastic news. So why do you look so miserable? The man sighed and leaned forward, dropping his head into his hands. Because, Doc, my wife doesn't share your enthusiasm. It was a scorching summer afternoon, and Dave was lounging comfortably on the couch, watching TV in the cool embrace of the air conditioning. Meanwhile, outside in the blazing sun, his wife Lisa was pushing the lawnmower, sweat dripping down her face. After a while, Dave, feeling a slight pang of hunger, finally mustered the energy to step outside. Leaning against the doorframe, he called out, "Hey, honey, what's for supper?" Lisa stopped dead in her tracks, wiped her forehead, and shot him a glare so intense it could have cooked the dinner he was asking about. "Are you serious right now, Dave? I'm out here mowing the lawn in this heat while you're sitting inside doing nothing, and you're worried about supper?" Dave shrugged. "Well, yeah." Lisa huffed, throwing her hands up. "You know what? Pretend I'm out of town. Go inside and figure it out yourself." With that, she yanked the lawnmower cord and went back to work, shaking her head. Dave, taking her words quite literally, wandered back inside. If Lisa was out of town, then he was on his own for dinner. So he got to work, grilling up a juicy steak, making crispy potatoes, toasting garlic bread, and pouring himself a tall, ice-cold glass of tea. Just as he was finishing his last bite, Lisa walked in, exhausted. She sniffed the air, eyes narrowing. "You cook something?" she asked. Dave leaned back, patting his full stomach. "Yep." Lisa put her hands on her hips. "So, where's mine?" Dave blinked at her, then shrugged. "Huh? I thought you were out of town." Harry was practically bouncing with excitement as he packed up his desk for the day. Tomorrow was the day, his wedding day. He was finally getting married, and he couldn't wait. Just as he was about to leave, his boss, Mr. Thompson, walked over with a big grin and an outstretched hand. "Congratulations, Harry," he said warmly, shaking his hand. "I just wanted to tell you, I've been married for 22 years, and I can promise you this. You will always remember this day as the happiest day of your life." Harry beamed. "Wow, thank you, sir. That means a lot." Then he hesitated. "But I don't get married until tomorrow." Mr. Thompson gave him a knowing look, patted him on the shoulder, and said with a sigh, "Yeah, Harry, I know." And with that, he walked away, leaving Harry standing there suddenly deep in thought. For years, Mrs. Sharma's routine had been simple. Wake up early, go to the temple, and spend her morning in prayer. But lately, something had changed. Instead of heading to the temple, she had taken up a new habit: swimming lessons. Her friends and neighbors were baffled. One day, one of them finally asked, "Mrs. Sharma, why the sudden interest in swimming? You've never done this before." With a sigh, she looked at them and said, "It's because of my daughter-in-law." The group exchanged glances, confused. "Your daughter-in-law?" Mrs. Sharma nodded. "Every time she and my son have an argument, she always asks him, 'If your mother and I fall into the water, whom will you save first?'" She shook her head helplessly. "I don't want my son to be in such a difficult position. So I figured, I'll just learn to swim myself." Her friends burst into laughter, but Mrs. Sharma just smiled, determined. A few days later, as expected, another argument erupted between her son and daughter-in-law, and as always, the daughter-in-law demanded, "Tell me now, if your mother and I fall into the water, whom will you save first?" Her husband sighed, already prepared. "I don't have to jump in. My mom knows how to swim. She'll save you." But his wife was relentless. "No, you must jump in and save one of us." Her husband shrugged. "Well then, you're definitely going to die." She gasped. "What? Why?" He sighed. "Because I don't know how to swim, and my mom will definitely save me first." It was a quiet evening at home when Lisa suddenly turned to her husband Mark with a mischievous smile. "Honey, let's play a game," she said excitedly. Mark, always up for a bit of fun, put down his phone. "All right, what's the game about?" Lisa grinned. "Simple. If I say the name of a country, you run to the left side of the room and touch the wall. If I say the name of a bird, you run to the right and touch the wall. But be careful, if you run in the wrong direction, you'll have to give me your entire salary this month." Mark raised an eyebrow. "And if you mess up, I get your salary, right?" Lisa chuckled. Of course, darling. Mark stood up, stretching his legs, ready for action. All right, let's do this. Lisa gave him a sweet smile and said, Are you ready? Mark nodded. Ready. Lisa took a deep breath, looked him straight in the eye, and said just one word. Turkey. Mark froze. His brain short-circuited. Left or right? Left, because it's a country, or right, because it's a bird? Seconds ticked by, then minutes. Lisa sat back on the couch, sipping her tea, watching her husband remain rooted to the spot, deep in thought. An hour passed, then 2. By the 4th hour, Mark was still standing there, motionless, his forehead slightly sweaty, his entire month's salary on the line. Lisa simply smiled and patted his shoulder. Take your time, darling. Moral of the story? After God, fear women.